Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Logan Barton finally bought the tractor of his dreams, he thought his toughest battles were behind him. But when a power-hungry HOA president storms onto his land claiming it's stolen, he's thrust into a war of property, pride, and justice that shakes the whole town to its core. I'd been dreaming about that tractor for years. Not just any old tractor either. This one had GPS mapping, auto-lift controls, full climate cab, and more bells and whistles than a John Deere showroom. So when I finally scraped together enough from harvest season and closed a great deal through a dealer buddy out of Asheville, it felt like the closest thing to Christmas I'd had since I was 10. The moment they rolled it off the trailer and I climbed into that polished, oil-scented cockpit, I swear I sat an inch taller in the seat. You ever fall in love with a machine? This was that. I spent the first 3 days riding that thing like a proud idiot, clearing brush, moving logs, turning soil just for the hell of it. Hell, I even used the loader to restack some hay bales I'd already stacked the week before. I knew my neighbors probably thought I was showing off, but it wasn't about that. After everything this land's been through, storms, rot, taxes, and more than a few nosy HOA creeps sniffing around over the years, it felt like finally I had something nice that worked exactly as it should. No duct tape, no prayer, just power. On the third evening, my buddy Nick stopped by. He's the kind of guy who can rebuild a carburetor with one hand and open a beer with the other. Former diesel mechanic, now runs his own garage a few miles out. He circled the tractor with a grin and gave it a solid thump on the hood. "Looks like you finally joined the future," he said. "Might want to throw a lock on the fuel cap, though. Pretty machines like this tend to wander if folks get ideas." I laughed. What, you think someone's gonna hotwire it and cruise down Main Street like it's the Indy 500? He raised an eyebrow. "Around here? Hell yes. Especially if a certain HOA queen decides she wants it for her rose garden." I didn't have to ask who he meant. Karen Davenport was infamous out here, president of Maple Creek Vista, a stone's throw from my property line. Gated community, white fencing, perfectly trimmed lawns, and enough rules to make a prison warden blush. I wasn't part of her kingdom, thank God, but she had this habit of acting like the whole township answered to your clipboard. It wasn't 24 hours later when her SUV rolled up my gravel drive like it owned the place. I was greasing the loader joint when I heard the unmistakable screech of tires on rock. I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag, and there she was. Blonde bob stiff with hairspray, pastel sweater that probably cost more than my month's fuel bill, and a clipboard tucked under her arm like a scepter. "Well, hello there," she chirped like she hadn't tried to get my road access shut down 2 years ago. "What a lovely piece of equipment you've got here. That yours?" I nodded, cautious. "Yep, just bought it. Got all the paperwork, if that's what you're fishing for." She gave a too sweet smile and stepped closer, heels crunching gravel like she was about to bless the damn thing with holy water. It looks so familiar. Almost exactly like the tractor my grandfather had. Same green. Same loader mount. Even the decal looks aged the same way. I snorted. Well, he's got good taste. But this one's fresh from the lot. Bought it last week in Asheville. You're welcome to take a look from here, but I'd prefer you didn't touch it. She tilted her head like I was speaking Swahili. Oh, I wouldn't dream of being rude. I just couldn't help but notice it from the street. Grandpa's old Massey Ferguson was stolen about a month ago. You wouldn't have happened to buy this one secondhand, would you? My smile thinned. "No, ma'am. I've got the invoice, the title, even a picture of me shaking the dealer's hand. This isn't your grandpa's tractor." She didn't blink. "Well, mistakes happen. Maybe someone sold it to you not knowing it was stolen." I folded the rag and tossed it on the fender. "You accusing me of something?" Her smile froze. "Of course not. Just curious. I'll let you get back to work." Without waiting for a goodbye, she turned on her heel and strode back to her SUV, her tires kicking up dust like she was fleeing the scene of a crime. I watched her disappear down the road and shook my head. Something about that conversation didn't sit right. It wasn't the first time Karen had come sniffing around my land under some manufactured excuse, but this felt different, too pointed, too specific, like she wasn't just speculating, she was setting up a move. I walked back to the barn, pulled out the purchase folder, and double-checked everything just in case. Everything was in order, but that didn't stop the hairs on the back of my neck from standing up. That night, I installed a new motion light over the barn door and double-locked the equipment bay. Just a precaution. Or so I told myself. I didn't sleep all that well that night. Not from fear, just that nagging feeling you get when someone brushes too close to your property line, both literally and figuratively. Karen had always been annoying, sure, but something about her tone this time had a different edge. It wasn't HOA smugness. It was calculated. The next morning started like any other, coffee, boots on, chores lined up. I'd just finished feeding the goats and was heading to grease the PTO shaft when I noticed something odd. The barn door was unlatched. I know damn well I locked it the night before. I'm not the type to forget things like that. There weren't any signs of forced entry, but the latch was hanging loose, and a faint scuff mark traced across the gravel like someone had dragged a boot or a stick. I opened the barn slowly, half expecting to find a raccoon or a neighbor's kid hiding inside, but it was empty. Nothing seemed stolen or broken. Still, I felt watched. I went back to the house, checked the motion cam footage. The angle wasn't great, but around 3:30 a.m., a vehicle's headlights lit up the far fence line, just for a moment. Too far to ID the car. Could have been anyone. Still, I made a mental note to add another camera and bolted the barn tight. By noon, I was hauling a load of mulch from the east field when I saw the SUV again. Same tan Lexus, same HOA license plate frame. But this time, Karen wasn't alone. She had two men with her, big ones. The kind that either play semi-pro football or haven't left the gym since the Bush administration. Both wore dark polos with the words Community Security Volunteer printed across the chest in cheap white vinyl. It was a joke. Maple Creek Vista didn't have a real security team. These were just HOA cronies in matching shirts playing weekend vigilante. And behind them, propped on a cane and looking confused but determined, was the old man himself, Seth Davenport, Karen's grandfather. They pulled up to my drive like they owned it, stepped out, and Karen didn't even bother pretending this time. She marched straight toward the barn. "Mr. Barton," she said, using the kind of tone a dentist reserves for telling you your molar is about to be yanked. "We're here to reclaim stolen property. Please open the barn." I stepped down from the tractor, wiping sweat from my neck with my sleeve. "No." One of the goons moved closer. "We can make this easy." "No," I repeated. "This is private land. You have no warrant, no cause, and no damn authority." Karen gestured dramatically toward the barn. "That tractor belongs to my grandfather. It disappeared a month ago, and he's identified it as his." I looked at the old man. His eyes were squinting against the sun, and he seemed to be trying to make sense of what was happening. "Is that yours, Mr. Davenport?" I asked, keeping my tone even. He shuffled forward a step, eyes drifting over the machine. "Sure looks like it," he muttered. "Same green paint, loader mount. Could be mine." I shook my head. "Sir, I respect your age, but your Massey Ferguson was a 20-year-old rust bucket. This is a brand new factory-issued model with modern electronics. This thing's got a satellite uplink. Yours didn't even have brakes that worked." Karen snapped. "We're not here to argue, Logan. We're here to inspect. Either you let us in, or we'll assume you're hiding stolen property." "Then assume away," I said. "Step 1 foot past that barn door without a deputy, and you'll be the ones breaking the law." That's when it all went sideways. One of the security clowns lunged forward and grabbed me by the shoulder. The other moved to block the barn entrance. I twisted out of his grip, stumbling back, heart hammering. Karen shouted something about citizens' investigation while her grandfather stood blinking at the chaos. Then, without hesitation, they forced the barn door open and pushed inside. I charged after them, but the second guy shoved me back hard enough to send me into the wall. I caught myself before hitting the dirt, teeth clenched in rage. Inside, I could hear Karen's voice echoing. "There it is. Same seat, same loader. Grandpa, look, it's yours." From outside, I could see them circling my machine like it was an exhibit at the damn Smithsonian. They started taking pictures. One even tried to lift the hood. I was done. This wasn't neighbor drama anymore. This was breaking and entering, assault, and tampering with my property. I reached for my phone, but just then, I heard tires screech. Nick, his old red Dodge, came barreling down the driveway, dust flying behind it like a scene from a Western. He saw me pinned near the barn, saw the two oversized morons digging through my tractor like they were gutting a deer, and didn't even hesitate. Nick threw it in park, jumped out with his phone filming, and yelled, "Hey, get the hell off his land." The goons turned. One stepped toward him, puffed up like he wanted to make it a wrestling match. Nick didn't wait. He stepped in and cracked the guy in the side of the knee with a steel thermos he always carried. The dude dropped like a sack of cement. The second one lunged. I got back on my feet and tackled him from behind. I don't remember how long the fight lasted. Could have been 30 seconds, could have been 5 minutes. All I know is that by the end of it, both of them were on the ground, groaning, and Karen was screaming something about assault and calling the police. I looked around at the mess, my barn breached, my property violated, my pulse still pounding in my ears. Nick was already dialing. "Cops are coming," he said. And this time, they're not going to be on her side. The moment Karen hung up her phone, she launched into performance mode like she'd been rehearsing this all her life. Clutching her wrist dramatically, she began pacing in frantic little circles, waving her arms and yelling into her phone like she was narrating a hostage situation. I caught snippets: assaulted, violent outburst, stolen property, and my personal favorite, my elderly grandfather is in shock. Seth, for the record, was sitting on a nearby hay bale, sipping from a bottle of water Nick had handed him, and squinting at the tractor like he was trying to remember what decade it was. Nick leaned against the barn wall beside me, breathing hard. Think she knows we just saved her a lawsuit by not letting that guy break his neck when he tackled me? Don't think she's in the mood for gratitude, I muttered, brushing dirt off my jeans. We didn't have to wait long. Within 10 minutes, a county cruiser pulled up, lights flashing but no siren. 2 deputies stepped out, Officer Daniels, fresh-faced and barely out of the academy, and Officer Murphy, a seasoned guy with a gut that told you he'd seen enough neighbor drama for one lifetime. Murphy gave me a slight nod, recognizing me from a few town council meetings. Karen immediately launched herself toward them like a rocket made of entitlement. Officers, thank God. These men violently attacked our security personnel while we were conducting a lawful community inspection regarding a stolen vehicle belonging to my grandfather. Murphy raised an eyebrow. "You were what?" "It's his tractor," she shrieked, pointing toward Seth, who gave a vague thumbs up and mumbled, "Looks familiar." Daniels stepped forward with his notepad. "Sir, are you the property owner?" "I am," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Logan Barton, this is my farm and that's my tractor. I've got receipts, VIN numbers, and camera footage. These people entered my land without permission, manhandled me, and tried to force entry into my barn." Karen barked a laugh. "You're delusional. You assaulted us." Murphy gave her a long, tired look. "Ma'am, we'll get everyone's statement, but if what Mr. Barton is saying is true, we've got bigger issues." That's when Nick stepped in, holding up his phone. "Got the whole thing on video. Want the file?" Murphy's tone changed instantly. "Yes, send that over." Nick airdropped the footage to both officers. We watched as they huddled around Murphy's phone. The entire scene played out in crisp HD, Karen arriving uninvited, the 2 rent-a-goons grabbing me, forcing open the barn door, storming inside. Karen's voice was unmistakable. "Get in there! He's hiding it!" Then the scuffle. Me getting thrown into a wall. Nick clocking the knee guy. No audio editing, no cuts. Just raw, undeniable trespassing and assault. Murphy exhaled slowly. "Well, that complicates things." Karen, sensing things slipping, pulled out her phone. "I have footage too." Murphy held out his hand. "Let's see it." She hesitated, then handed it over. Her video, of course, started with Nick's thermos hitting the guy's leg. No context, no lead-up, just action. Daniels frowned. "Ma'am, did you intentionally cut the beginning of this video?" Karen blinked rapidly. I only started filming once the situation escalated." "That's funny," Nick said, "because I saw you filming the whole time. So, where's the rest?" Karen turned beet red. "It must have been deleted accidentally." Murphy turned back to me. "Do you have proof of ownership?" I walked to the barn, opened the side office, and returned with a folder. Inside was the sales invoice, dealer correspondence, title application, and a USB drive with footage of me shaking hands with the dealership manager during the handoff. I handed everything over without a word. Murphy and Daniels reviewed the documents, murmured to each other, then made a call on their radio. "Dispatch," Murphy said. "Run a VIN on a green John Deere. Serial number ends in 8547 Charlie. Copy." A moment later, "Vehicle is registered to Logan Barton. No reports of theft." Murphy turned slowly toward Karen. "Ma'am, did you report your grandfather's tractor as stolen?" Karen folded her arms. "I was going to. It disappeared a month ago." "Did you file a report?" "No. I assumed it was a neighbor dispute." Murphy's face darkened. Let me get this straight. You didn't report the tractor stolen. You entered private property without permission. You brought unauthorized personnel. You assaulted the landowner. And now you're making accusations based on a vague resemblance and a 90-year-old man's memory? Seth coughed behind her. He's 86, he said. And now that I look closer, mine didn't have a touchscreen. Or those mirror mounts. Karen shot him a look that could melt lead. Murphy turned to Daniels. Cuff the two muscleheads. Assault and trespassing. We'll deal with the rest in processing. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us, too. Karen gasped. You can't be serious. This is a mistake. I'm the president of Maple Creek Vista. Murphy sighed. Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Let's go. As they loaded the three of them into the cruiser, Nick and I stood there silent. Finally, Nick said, You think they'll try to sue you or just slink off quietly? I shrugged. With Karen, I'd bet on a lawsuit. And maybe a press release. It didn't take long for the fallout to start. By that evening, the phone was ringing off the hook. First, it was a reporter from the local station wanting a comment on the HOA tractor incident. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemails, neighbors offering support, folks from town laughing about the arrest, and one from my insurance agent asking if I planned to press charges or just let civil court sort it out. It was surreal. All I wanted was to till some soil and spread fertilizer, and now I was a damned headline. The real mess started the next morning. I was out in the field inspecting irrigation lines when I saw a county vehicle crawl up my driveway, unmarked, white, but with government plates and a familiar county seal on the door. A young woman in business casual stepped out, holding a tablet and a clipboard. Behind her, a second car pulled in, this one from zoning. Morning, I called, already bracing for the headache. Help you with something? She gave me a tight smile. Are you Logan Barton? That's me. I'm with the county inspection office. We received a complaint from Maple Creek Vista HOA about possible violations on your property, specifically unregistered agricultural equipment, noise ordinance breaches, and non-permitted structures. I actually laughed out loud. You're kidding. She didn't laugh back. I assure you, Mr. Barton, this is official protocol. We have to follow up on every formal HOA submitted grievance, especially when they include attached community concern statements. Let me guess, I said, Karen. I can't disclose the complainant, she replied flatly, but the way her eye twitched told me everything. I led her and the zoning guy around the property for over an hour. They took pictures of the barn, checked the serial plates on the tractor, and even questioned whether the goat shelter met setback requirements. Spoiler alert, it did. I showed them every permit, every inspection document. I had nothing to hide, and they damn well knew it. By the end, zoning guy gave me a half-apologetic shrug. Everything looks good, sir. Sorry to bother you, but these things come down from upstairs. I nodded. No hard feelings. But if Karen sends another complaint, tell her I said hi. Maybe send her a brochure on minding her damn business. They chuckled, packed up, and drove off. I barely made it back inside when my lawyer, Shelley Monroe, called. I'd hired her years ago after a dispute over water rights, and she was exactly the type you wanted in your corner. Steel spine, silk voice, and a legal brain sharper than a grain thresher blade. She didn't bother with small talk. Logan, I just got the first draft of the incident report from the sheriff's office. It's worse than we thought. Worse how? She tried to claim the tractor had been stolen and repainted to hide its origin. She submitted an old photo of her grandfather's Massey Ferguson and tried to argue it was visually identical to yours. I pinched the bridge of my nose. That's like saying my barn cat is identical to a bobcat because they both have ears. She also claimed that the VIN was swapped or filed down, but the deputies already verified it's clean and matches your purchase. Still, she's doubling down. I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to countersue for emotional distress or damage to her grandfather's mental health. I rubbed my jaw. Her grandfather looked more distressed by the fact she dragged him into that mess. There's more. Her HOA board is trying to distance themselves now. They sent a letter to the sheriff's office clarifying that the community patrol volunteers were acting without formal authorization. They're clearly trying to dodge liability. So what's our next move? I'm filing a protective injunction today to prevent any further trespassing. Then we hit them with a civil suit, trespass, attempted fraud, defamation, and unlawful detainment. You think we've got a case? Shelley's laugh was cold. We've got a case so strong I could prosecute it blindfolded with one hand tied behind my back. But I want to push harder. We go after the HOA as an entity. If she acted in her capacity as president, they're partially responsible. We could force a restructuring, maybe even dissolution. I grinned. Think they'll still want to regulate lawn height after that? Later that afternoon, I made my way into town to pick up a few things, some wiring for a new floodlight system, a new padlock for the gate, and, what the hell, a bottle of decent bourbon. Folks at the hardware store were already buzzing. You hear Karen's out on bail. Yeah, and rumor is her HOA board's turning on her. I heard her lawyer dropped her case after seeing the video footage. I didn't say much, just nodded and paid. But something about hearing it from the community made it more real. For once, it wasn't just me fending off crazy. The whole town had seen it, and no one was buying her story. That night, I installed 2 new motion cameras, repositioned the floodlight, and replaced the old gate lock with a smart one that sent alerts straight to my phone. I also made a laminated sign that I zip-tied to the barn door, private property. Do not enter, no HOA jurisdiction. Trespassers will be recorded, prosecuted, and publicly embarrassed. It might not stop the Karens of the world, but it made me feel better. It had been 4 days since the invasion, and by now the whole damn county had an opinion about it. The sheriff's office was fielding calls. The local Facebook moms group had exploded with theories, and someone even made a meme of Karen's face photoshopped onto a wanted poster with the caption, "Tractor Jacker, Level HOA." Nick printed it and taped it to the side of my tool shed. I didn't take it down. I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching the sun rise over the tree line, when Shelley called again. "We've got movement," she said, skipping greetings as usual. "The HOA just issued a public statement." "Let me guess," I said. "We're deeply saddened by recent events and wish to clarify, blah, blah, blah." "Pretty much," she replied. They claim Karen was acting independently and, without board approval, they're scrambling to avoid being named in the suit. That's rich, considering she's the one who signed the complaint and used their resources. "Oh, I know, and we're going to nail them for it." That afternoon, Shelley and I met with Detective Ramirez, the one now heading up the criminal side of the case. Unlike the patrol officers who'd responded initially, Ramirez wasn't there for neighborly diplomacy. She was methodical, calm, and sharp-eyed. The kind of person who sees through bullshit in 3 seconds flat. "We've reviewed all video footage," she began, setting her tablet on the table. "Mr. Barton, your documentation is complete, time-stamped, and irrefutable. The VIN check confirmed the tractor was purchased legally. The dealership even provided their internal video logs." She slid a folder toward Shelley. "Here's what's more interesting. Karen filed a new document after her release. She submitted a notarized statement from her grandfather claiming he gifted the tractor to a neighbor 10 years ago and that the neighbor must have resold it illegally." I blinked. "What neighbor?" "She listed a man named Carl Jenkins." I leaned back in my chair. "Carl Jenkins died in 2017. Ramirez nodded. "That's what we found too. Stroke. No surviving spouse. No estate records indicating possession of farm equipment, and no connection whatsoever to this tractor." Shelley didn't even look up from the folder. "That's not a mistake. That's fabrication." "Exactly," Ramirez said. "Which means Karen may have just escalated her situation into felony territory. Attempted fraud, falsifying official records, obstruction." I let out a low whistle. "She really doesn't know when to quit." Ramirez continued, "And here's the kicker. When we pulled property tax records, we discovered her grandfather's tractor was never even registered. No insurance, no VIN on file. That machine she keeps referencing. It doesn't legally exist." Shelley looked up, smirking. "So she tried to claim I stole a phantom tractor?" "In so many words," the detective replied. "She wanted your machine to replace one she let rot in a shed. We finished the meeting and filed 3 additional charges. I signed the papers. It felt good. 2 days later, I was back at the farm when a letter arrived by certified mail. Return address, Karen's lawyer. Inside was a formal demand. "Mr. Barton, we are prepared to settle this matter civilly. Should you agree to return the equipment in question and issue a formal apology, we will forgo additional legal action and consider the matter closed." I read it twice, then handed it to Nick, who nearly choked on his coffee. "Return the tractor?" he snorted. "Did they also ask for your house and your goats while they were at it?" I'm tempted to reply with a picture of me flipping the bird while sitting on the damn thing, I muttered. Shelley called again, not long after. She'd received a copy too. "I'm filing our official counter-response," she said. including full civil suit documentation. We're going after them for trespassing, emotional distress, property interference, attempted fraud, and punitive damages. And we're adding the HOA itself for negligent oversight. They're gonna wish they just sent a fruit basket. I knew things were getting serious when I started getting emails from journalists outside our state. One from Texas asked if I'd be interested in doing a podcast about HOA abuse. Another from a legal blog wanted to publish my case as an example of homeowner defense. Meanwhile, the HOA itself was melting down. According to neighbors, 2 board members had resigned, and a third was caught trying to delete emails from the HOA server. An anonymous whistleblower leaked meeting transcripts where Karen had discussed neutralizing non-compliant properties and asserting jurisdiction by any means necessary. Turns out this wasn't just about my tractor. Karen had a pattern. One homeowner was fined $2,000 for installing solar panels. Another was threatened with eviction over the color of her garden gnomes. And one elderly couple, this one made me furious, had received violation notices while the husband was in hospice care. Shelley was ecstatic. This is gold. We don't just have a case. We have a goddamn crusade. You gonna wear armor to the courtroom? I asked. No, she said. Just a very sharp suit and a lot of subpoenas. The summons landed on Karen's front step at precisely 10:46 in the morning, hand-delivered by a county deputy who, according to my neighbor Grace, looked like he'd been waiting all week to drop it off. Grace said she watched from her porch with a cup of tea in hand, and when Karen opened the door in her robe and saw the papers, she let out a sound like a wounded raccoon and slammed it shut hard enough to rattle the storm window. By noon, the HOA's website was offline. Nick and I sat in my shop that afternoon, going over the list of names Shelley had compiled, neighbors willing to testify, vendors who'd had run-ins with Karen, even a former HOA board member who'd resigned after being ethically pressured to approve. An illegal lien against a homeowner over a misplaced mailbox. You think they're gonna settle? Nick asked, tapping the folder with his knuckle. If they had any sense, I said. But sense isn't something Karen's known for. Just then, Shelley texted, "Update. HOA filed emergency motion to dismiss suit, claiming no liability for actions taken by president outside of approved meetings. Rejected within 20 minutes. Judge is not amused." I read the message out loud. Nick grinned. Reckon they're starting to feel the noose tighten. It only got worse for them from there. The judge scheduled a pre-trial hearing for the following week. Until then, the injunction kept Karen and anyone affiliated with the HOA at least 100 yards from my property. The local news station ran a new segment titled "The Tractor That Broke the HOA," and for the first time in recorded history, the town actually seemed united on something. Shelley and I met with the whistleblower, a woman named Elise who'd served as HOA treasurer before quitting in disgust. She brought printouts, real damning stuff. Emails where Karen referred to me as an obstacle to community vision, internal memos suggesting plans to redraw HOA boundaries to forcibly incorporate neighboring properties. A list titled "Known Resistors" that included me, Nick, and even a guy who had refused to donate to their Easter egg hunt 2 years ago. Shelley took one look and said, "We're adding coercion and boundary harassment to the list." I asked Elise what made her come forward. She sighed. I watched Karen bully an old veteran down the block into selling his house because he had a flagpole she didn't like. That's not community. That's a cartel. The HOA's lawyer, meanwhile, tried to play defense in the court of public opinion. They gave an interview on local radio claiming that the situation has been exaggerated and that certain elements are trying to dismantle long-standing neighborhood values. That backfired fast. Within 24 hours, a dozen current and former residents went public. The woman with the solar panels, the hospice couple's daughter, a handyman who'd been banned from the development for improper vehicle aesthetics. They shared their stories, photos, emails, fines, enough dirt to bury the entire HOA in paperwork. On the eve of the pretrial hearing, I walked my property line just after sunset. The air was still warm and heavy with the scent of summer grass and pine sap. Motion lights flicked on as I passed the barn, and the faint hum of the new security system clicked softly in the background. That's when I saw him. A figure, small and slow, moving along the edge of the fence. For a split second, my gut tensed. Another intruder, another HOA stunt. But it was just Seth Davenport. He shuffled up to the gate, dressed in an old cardigan and slippers, carrying something in both hands. I walked over and met him by the gate, unlatched it, and waited. He looked up at me. eyes tired but steady. "I owe you an apology," he said. "You don't owe me anything, sir." He held out a shoebox. Inside was a stack of yellowed documents, old registration slips, a faded photo of a red Massey Ferguson, and a manual so rusted at the edges it practically crumbled. "This was my tractor," he said. "Bought it in 1995. It broke down 10 years ago. Been sitting in a shed, wheels sunk into the dirt." I nodded slowly. "I know. I knew it wasn't yours," he admitted. "Not really. Not once I saw that screen and those satellite ports. But she told me to say it. Said it would make things easier. Karen," he nodded, ashamed. "She's my granddaughter, but she ain't the girl I raised. She got power, and it made her mean. I just wanted to stay out of the mess." I didn't say anything. Just looked down at the box, then back at him. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "And thank you for not pressing charges against me." I opened the gate fully. "You want to come in and see what a real tractor looks like these days?" He smiled faintly. "I'd like that." We stood there in the glow of the barn lights, two men from different generations connected by diesel bad decisions and one very expensive machine neither of us would ever forget. The morning of the pretrial hearing was gray and humid, like the weather had decided to match the mood of Maple Creek Vista. I wore a clean shirt, jeans without mud stains, and boots I'd polished the night before, not for the court, but out of respect for Shelley. She liked when her clients looked presentable but principled, as she put it. Nick offered to drive, but I told him I'd rather arrive under my own power. Something about walking into a courthouse after all this with my own keys in my hand felt right. The parking lot outside the county building was fuller than I expected. A few local reporters, a half-dozen neighbors I didn't know well but had seen at town events, and, parked off to the side like it was trying to avoid attention, a black SUV I immediately recognized as belonging to the remaining HOA board members. Inside, the courtroom buzzed quietly. Karen sat at the defense table flanked by her third attorney in 2 weeks. This one a slick, tired-looking man in a wrinkled blazer who had the air of someone regretting his entire career. She didn't meet my eyes. Judge Burnell entered, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd presided over zoning cases for 20 years and once fined a county official for putting a gazebo too close to a wetland. She looked over the docket, peered down her glasses, and asked the room one simple question. "Are we all ready to proceed like grown-ups today?" Shelley stood. "We are, Your Honor." Karen's lawyer cleared his throat and rose as well. "The defense is prepared, though we'd like to request clarification on the scope of—" "Sit down," the judge said flatly. We'll get there." What followed wasn't the trial itself, just a pre-trial conference to determine the structure of the upcoming litigation, admissibility of evidence, and whether either side was open to settlement. But the sheer amount of evidence Shelley brought turned it into a reckoning. Exhibit A, footage from Nick's dash cam and phone. Exhibit B, the full paper trail of the tractor sale, including the dealer's own security footage. Exhibit C, Karen's fabricated notarized statement, now officially under investigation for fraud. Exhibit D, HOA internal communications obtained by the whistleblower, each more damning than the last. Karen sat frozen as Shelley described the intimidation tactics, the pattern of property harassment, the reckless escalation that led to physical violence. Her lawyer tried to object at one point, but the judge just raised a hand. "If you object to factual documentation, counsel, we can stop wasting taxpayer money and go straight to sanctions." And then, as if things weren't already going poorly enough for Karen, the judge dropped a hammer. Given the breadth of evidence and the nature of the actions taken under the authority of an incorporated HOA, I am ordering an independent review of Maple Creek Vista's governance practices. Furthermore, I am referring the case of Ms. Davenport's notarized documents to the district attorney's office for review of possible criminal charges. You could hear a pin drop. Shelley kept it professional, but I saw the slight twitch of satisfaction at the corner of her mouth. Karen's lawyer immediately requested a recess to confer with his client. The judge gave him 10 minutes. When they returned, the defense made a surprising announcement. They were open to mediation. Shelley didn't flinch, only under the condition that all charges remain active and that the HOA acknowledges culpability. Karen's lawyer whispered something frantically into her ear. She didn't respond. Her arms were crossed, face locked in that same sour scowl that had become her permanent setting. Finally, she nodded once. The judge scheduled formal mediation within 2 weeks and gave both sides a warning. If either party wastes this court's time again, I will impose penalties, real ones. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of rain and cut grass. I leaned against Nick's truck while Shelley took a call from the DA's office. Across the lot, Karen stood alone, her lawyer gone, her bored allies having vanished like roaches under a kitchen light. Nick joined me with 2 sodas from a vending machine. How's it feel? Like we're getting close. To winning? To closure. That night, I didn't do much. Sat on the porch, watching the security feed on my tablet, the motion lights blinking every now and then when a deer wandered too close. The farm was quiet again, the way it should be. 2 weeks later, I walked into the mediation room with the kind of calm you only earn by walking through fire and not catching flame. It was a small office at the County Dispute Resolution Center. No judge, no reporters, just 2 lawyers, a mediator in a tweed jacket, and the lingering scent of burned reputation. Karen was already seated at the table when I arrived, arms crossed like a child being dragged to the principal's office. Her new attorney, number 4, sat beside her, flipping through a thin manila folder that probably contained nothing useful. Shelley nodded politely at the mediator and slid 2 heavy folders across the table. This is our final settlement offer. The mediator looked between us. Let's begin. What followed wasn't flashy. No screaming, no gavel, no public spectacle. Just legal chess. Shelley laid out every claim, every piece of damage, and every dollar we were demanding. Karen's lawyer tried to push back, but with 4 prior criminal charges now pending, including falsification of a notarized document and unlawful surveillance from a camera Karen had apparently installed pointing toward my barn without consent, he didn't have much ground to stand on. By hour 2, the mediator turned to Karen. You understand the plaintiff has a strong case and that a court trial will likely increase the damages awarded. Karen didn't speak, just stared at the folder. Her face looked hollow. The queen bee persona had cracked weeks ago, and now she was just tired. Eventually, she nodded. We reached a deal. Karen would formally apologize in writing, withdraw all accusations, and pay damages for trespassing, legal fees, emotional distress, and security upgrades. The HOA would be restructured under county oversight, with a third-party compliance auditor installed for 2 years. The 2 security enforcers pled guilty and took deals, 6 months probation and a public service requirement that included working on a community farm. I offered to let them pick weeds in my goat pen. The judge declined to make it mandatory, but it made the room laugh. And Karen, she resigned as president of Maple Creek Vista that very day. 3 weeks later, her house went on the market. Word was she moved to Florida. I didn't send a card. What surprised me most was the wave of gratitude that followed. Neighbors I barely knew showed up with pies, cookies, handshakes. A couple from the east side sent a hand-painted sign that read, "Farms over fences." Someone else made shirts with my tractor on the front and "I stand with Logan" on the back. I found one folded neatly on my porch one morning. Nick wore his to town like it was a uniform. Shelley wrapped up the paperwork cleanly and refused to take full payment. It was too fun, she said. Besides, I got 3 new clients just off this mess. The new HOA board reached out. Different people, humbler ones. They wanted help drafting less invasive guidelines. I gave them a polite no and a copy of my property deed with a post-it note that said, "Not your problem." On a warm Saturday, Nick came by with beer, and we sat by the barn watching the goats try to climb a half-assembled chicken coop. He nudged me. "You should name the tractor." I thought about it for a second. "I'm thinking Justice." He laughed. "Too corny." "Maybe, but it fits." I'd added one last sign to the property gate. Not fancy. Just white paint on treated wood, screwed in above the motion sensor. Private land. Trespass. Arrest. Tractors identified. Lawyers on standby. The land was quiet again. Not silent, but peaceful. The way it should be.